So, a little further on page 2, and again there should be annotations that direct you exactly where I'm reading from. He says, further, even if it, this eternal substance, even if it acts, this will be not enough, if its essence is potency. For there will not be eternal movement, since that which is potentially may possibly not be. That is, if it's the essence of anything to have potentiality, there will be a time, there will be a period, there will be a moment when it is not actualizing that potential. That can't be. God can't be like that, it seems to be saying. There must then be such a principle whose very essence is actuality. That is, a being, a substance, which is active and is always active, never at rest, never simply capable of doing something and not doing it. No, it must be fully actualizing its potential all the time. Further then, these substances must be without matter, for they must be eternal. That is, if something's physical, if it is made of matter, then in Aristotle's thinking it couldn't be eternal. So whatever we're talking about, this eternal substance, it can't be a physical substance. So what is it? Yet if we follow the theologians who generate the world from night, or the natural philosophers who say that all things were together, the same impossible result ensues. For how will there be movement if there is no actually existing cause? How will there be movement in the universe at all unless there were something which was always moving and always will be moving? Wood will surely not move itself. The carpenter's art must act on it. Nor will the menstrual blood nor the earth set themselves in motion. But the seeds must act on the earth and the semen on the menstrual blood. Yes, I just read that. And you know what? Let's not go into it. I don't think it's that important. This is why some suppose eternal actuality, like Leucippus and Plato, for they say there is always movement. And I think Aristotle would agree with these thinkers. But why and what this movement is, they do not say, nor if the world moves in this way or that, do they tell us the cause of its doing so. Now, nothing is moved at random, but there must always be something present to move it. That was Aristotle's physics, that if something is in motion, something must be putting it in motion, keeping it in motion, as opposed to modern physics or Newtonian physics, which believes that something is in motion, and it's just in motion, and it will stay in motion unless something stops it. For example, as a matter of fact, a thing moves in one way by nature and in another by force, or through the influence of reason or something else. But again, for Plato at least, it is not permissible to name here that which he sometimes supposes to be the source of movement, that which moves itself. For the soul is later and coeval with the heavens. So he's looking for something that moves itself, something which puts itself in motion, which is not put in motion by something else. Sorry, I just want to check the time there. To suppose potency, that is, potentiality, prior to actuality, then, is in a sense right, and in a sense not. That is, think of these two things, potentiality and actuality, being capable of doing something and actually doing it. In one sense, potentiality is prior to actuality. For instance, in our own experience. Right now, I have the potential to get up off this chair and move out of frame. I have that potential now. Okay, I just did it. I actualized that potential. There, the potency or the potential was prior to the actuality. The capability of doing it came before and was prior to the actual doing of it. So in a sense, to say that potentiality is prior to actuality is right. But in a larger sense, it's not, he says. And we have specified these senses. That actuality is prior is testified by Anaxagoras, for his reason is actuality, and by Empedocles in his doctrine of love and strife. He's referring to earlier philosophers. And by those who say that there is always movement, for example, Leucippus. Therefore, chaos or night do not exist for an infinite time, but the same things have always existed, either passing through a cycle of changes or obeying some other law, since actuality is prior to potency. So, in the largest view, the universal or cosmological view, as opposed to the individual view, what silly thing I did when I got out of the frame, He's saying that actuality is prior to potentiality. That is, for there to be a universe where there are potentials, where there are things like me which can have potentials which may be actualized, may not be actualized, for that whole universal structure to exist, there had to be something that was in actuality to begin with, or always in actuality. For the latter, the universe of potentials could not have existed were there not, prior to it, something that was always in actuality. He continues, and if there is to be generation and destruction, there must be something else which is always acting in different ways. This must then act in one way in virtue of itself, and in another in virtue of something else, either of a third agent, therefore, or of the first. Now it must be in virtue of the first, for otherwise this again causes the motion both of the second agent and of the third. Therefore it is better to say the first. He's getting to the idea of a first mover. A mover that is responsible for all the motion of the universe and, crucially, is not itself moved. Skipping to part 7. Sorry. Well, we'll skip to part 7. I'll do one or two more little talks on this later. But what's he getting to in part 7? He's getting to a description of God as a mover, as a force that puts the universe in motion and keeps it in motion. Because, again, Aristotle would say that something's in motion, something else must have put it in motion. And this we call God, this mover. Crucially, a mover that is itself unmoved, that is, that puts itself in motion, is not put into motion by something else. Because obviously, if that were true, we'd have big doubts about whether we were talking about God here. Something else had to put it into motion. So, next time we'll get to that. Why is God characterized as an unmoved mover, and more importantly, actually, what is it that God's actually doing to put the universe in motion?